going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Impact Space podcast. I'm here with my bro, Mumbi. What's good, man?
What's up, brother? Always a pleasure.
Let's get into it. This is a fun one because this one is about the specifics of how players can improve as individuals in the area of figuring out different movement solutions, you could say, to pressure during the course of a game, right? So, and I put it that way because it's a different paradigm than, say, how you can learn some moves to beat players, because we don't believe in that language here. It's a slightly different way of looking at it, and then that lends itself also to a discussion about what to look for and what to get out of private training. Because I know a lot of players do private training, and not that it's not useful, it's just you have to be very clear about what to look for, and so that you're getting the best experience there. Anything else to add, Mumbi, before we get into it?
Nope, take it away. I think you've set the foundation there, so it's good.
Gotta say, like, share, and subscribe the video. We're so blessed to have a beautiful community that's already starting to grow, and we want you to be part of it. So if you enjoy our content and you want to hear more, please like, share, subscribe. We have some amazing things coming up. So, and then this topic is one that we've been wanting to get into for a while, and it's very popular, and we're just gonna get into it, man. So let me ask you though, in your experience, because you do private training, what should people? Well, let me ask you: should we start there, or should we start with how players can improve individually?
We can start with how players improve individually and then come back to private training.
Okay, so what typically happens when young players are getting advice on how to improve, or when they're looking to, let's say, top level players for things that they can incorporate in their game, is they will think of it in terms of a series of moves that they need to learn in order to then play successfully, right? For example, Cristiano Ronaldo, or insert whatever player here, does this move, a scissors, a drag back, a chop, whatever you want to call it, Johan Cruyff, the Cruyff turn, these moves. So then we're told, I got to go practice these moves in isolation, and then maybe obviously against players, maybe in training, but it's these moves that'll help me become a better player. Mumbi, you've heard this line of thinking, or you've come across this?
Absolutely, and I think what it does sometimes is it actually does a disservice to the players, because when I watch players, each kid has a unique way of moving already, and sometimes that way of moving, it's not that they can't add that move or that solution, right? Because that's what it is, right? It's a solution. It's a way of beating a player. It's a way of moving. It's a way of navigating the field. But they maybe already have a solution based on how they've been brought up, based on their previous training that they can use. But sometimes the problem is now we're telling them, oh, you have to do this move, or you have to do this move, right? I want to see you do that chop. I want to see you do that step over. I want to see you do that scissors. And maybe under pressure, they're actually not comfortable using that move, or they haven't perfected it. They haven't worked on it enough, right? So sometimes I think it's a question of saying, here's what you could do. But one of the things that I personally like to do with players is I come back to a couple very clear principles of here's how you beat a player. It's a change of pace, it's a change of direction, and it's shielding, protecting the ball. How you do any one of those three things is going to be up to you, right? Like, for example, I can show you, hey, here's how you can shield the ball better, right? But in terms of how you change your pace, how you change your direction, there are so many unique ways to move. And sometimes kids already have a way, and we tell them, oh, did that work for you? Yes, it did? Okay, great. Do it again. And then when it doesn't work for you, find another way. But it doesn't have to be a scissors or a step over. And so just getting our heads away from the idea of it has to be this 1 or 2 or 3 set moves. I think that would help players a lot because then it really limits them, it really boxes them in terms of finding solutions.
So let's do this. Let's make a promise now because we've laid the foundation, and I echo everything you said there. We're going to now retire the term move. Okay? So we're not going to say that word because we're now going to talk about solutions. Yes? We're going to enter a different paradigm. And what I want to do first is I'm going to read from this book. Okay? My Turn, A Life of Total Football, Johan Cruyff. Because I want to express from the man himself how young players can think about playing football differently, which can help them then to solve these problems on the field. Okay? So this is just a brief snippet, and it's about this aforementioned Cruyff turn that he did in a game, which now lots of clubs and private trainers will teach kids how to do. Okay? But after the match, everyone was talking about the feint that I'd done, the so-called Cruyff turn, in which, in a forward motion, I dragged the ball behind my supporting leg, turned my body away immediately, and sprint towards the ball. The turn wasn't something I'd ever done in training or practiced. The idea came to me in a flash, because at that particular moment, it was the best solution for the situation I was in. There are impulses that arise because your technical and tactical knowledge has become so great that your legs are able to respond immediately to what your head wants them to do, even if that's nothing more than a flash in the brain. Okay, the reason I read that, there are a couple super important things to pull from there. First of all, it must be said, now let's take a historical lens. Johan Cruyff, brilliant footballer, may not, in fact, I'm probably guarantee that he wasn't the first player to ever do that motion with the ball. There's video evidence of Pelé, amongst others, I'm sure, doing that at an earlier time, different locale. And that's beautiful because it just shows you, yes, okay, the turn bears his name, and that maybe says something about, the power that certain people have in certain demographics in the world about naming things because the name has stuck. But he's not the only player who utilizes that. And here's the important thing is, it wasn't something, as he says, it wasn't something that he practiced before, and it wasn't a move that he was trying to encode in himself and then he could play. It was a solution that he found in the moment to the situation, meaning the pressure from the opponent, from his immediate defender that he was under, right? And that resulted in him feinting, pulling the ball away, and then sprinting. Here's how that impacts young players. Rather than trying to come up with 5 or 6 or however many number, right, of moves to beat, I said I was going to retire that term, but I'm using it now to point out the growth moment. Rather than come up with these moves, quote unquote, to beat players, you need to think about movement solutions to beat pressure, to outplay pressure. And that can look like a bunch of different things, right? And so that's the shift that we need to make. Mumbi, would you add anything to that?
No, absolutely. That change, though, in how you view it is critical. It's absolutely critical because what it means then is for players and even for coaches, you approach training differently. That's saying instead of practicing this one move, which by the way, it's not a bad thing to do. By the way, if you want to
Oh,
practice a
absolutely.
scissors, you want to practice a Cruyff or a pirouette, a Maradona, whatever. Go ahead, practice it. But at some point, it has to be put in its proper context, and there has to be live pressure. And this is what we're talking about: is that situation is what provides the stage for that player at that time to come up with that way of solving the problem, right? We're trying to solve a problem. And so I think it's critical that players and coaches are aware of, okay, well, now that there's pressure, now let's see what you can come up with. That's what I think the priority has to be at training.
So when you look at the top level and you look at how different players evade pressure or solve different solutions, it's very interesting how sometimes that doesn't match with the way that we teach young players. For example, regardless of what you think about him or where you put him in terms of the greatest players who's ever played, for me, he's number one. You can't argue. Nobody can argue that Messi is. Nobody can argue that he's not an exceptional talent, right? And an incredible dribbler. He is. And when you watch Messi, and any compilation, you can pull up any compilation, very rarely, if ever, I don't know if that I've seen it, does Messi do your traditional scissors move where he'll move one foot over the ball in a circular motion, like a, let's say, Brazilian Ronaldo, R9, or even Cristiano, or even old school. You remember the Brazilian player Denilson? Played in the 1998 World
Yeah,
Cup. That might have been
left-footed
before your
player,
time.
yeah.
Left-footed, yeah. He would, every time he got the ball, he would always do these. Okay, Messi doesn't do those, and yet he's objectively an exceptional dribbler,
And
beating
consistently
players,
beats players. Yep.
consistently beating players, evading pressure. How is this possible?
It's not his way of moving. He doesn't move that way.
But the
That's not
question
how
though
he
is, how is this possible? How is it possible?
Oh, you're actually asking me.
Yeah, how is it possible?
Yeah, well, that it doesn't. That's not the only way to beat players. Like he does the other things that I touched on earlier. That these are the things that is required to maintain possession of the ball and beat players, which is change of pace, change of direction, and shielding the ball. And he's mastered those concepts. He just does it a little bit differently, right? So he is more of a player that will do a body feint. He'll lower his shoulder, right, and then he'll take off the other direction, right? He'll take little touches to draw you in, and then he'll lift the ball. We've seen him do that move, right, where he brings you to the right.
No, not
and
move.
then
Remember, we're retiring that word.
he does this solution
Solution,
where he moves to the right, and as you come to bite, boom, he takes off to the left, drops his shoulder, boom, and then accelerates to his left. So he has a different way. That's his way, and that's something that he's been doing since he was a kid. If people go back and look at that footage as well.
So this is a shorter episode because it's straight to the point about this specific topic, and we're gonna leave you with this. We still have a little bit more time, but we want to leave you with this. For young players who want to learn how to find better solutions for themselves, understand this, and you don't have to take my word for it. Go and study the game. Watch your favorite players, and watch players at top level don't have a collection or a series of a bunch of different moves that they do. They are masters of adaptation. What I mean by that is, Mumbi, you gave the great example of Messi and how sometimes he'll wait, and this is the key. He's noticing what the defender is doing, and as he shifts his body, based on what the defender does, whether they bite to his initial action or not, his initial feint, then he'll make a counter to that. Mm-hmm. And this is the point. This is the point. It's about having feints, right? Little movements of your body to unbalance your direct opponent, and then being able to have the dexterity, the adaptation to be able to manipulate or move in a way that counters whatever the defender does. So in simplest terms, you read what the defender is doing, you make an action, then based on the reaction of the defender, you make another action. Maybe you keep going the same way, or maybe you counter it by doing something else, and then you go on, you sprint. You have to have a little burst, change of speed, change of direction. And here's the beautiful thing about that is, if you think of it that way, it really changes things, right? It really changes things because the emphasis is now, it's less about looking down, because this is what we often see in training, right? Literally this. We see this, and even in your isolated training sessions with your trainer, if you're focused like this, you're going to struggle at some point, because what needs to happen is this, right? And what needs to happen is you need to be so technically sharp with the ball and tactically aware to look up to be able to react to whatever the defender is doing. And when you start learning your body and the game in that way, you've now empowered yourself to solve pressure however you want to solve it, but with more clarity and with more efficiency based on what the game is giving you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's the key.
And I think to add to that, it's a question of, I guess the word I would use is, it's a question. I like the word you used earlier of flexibility, right? It's not about being stubborn, because you might say, "Oh, I want to do this one thing." Okay, but the defender is on the outside, so the space is on the inside, right? So Messi and top players know, if the defender gives them the space on the outside, they'll take the space on the outside. Messi last weekend scored a goal on his right foot, because as he has the ball on his left foot, the defender's blocking the goal, which is on the inside, which is where Messi ideally typically wants to go, as his strongest foot. But Messi knows, if the defender's there and it's really tight and I can't get through there, let me shift the ball onto my right. And the defender is off balance that moment. He shoots with his right, he scores on the far post. That's that adaptation. So if the space is on the right, then that's where you should try to move. However you move to the right. If the space is on the left, however you move, however you want to move, find a way to move to the left, right? And this is where I think players can be a bit more open-minded, instead of, I just want to do this one thing and go there. I want to go there, but the defender's there. So you have to go somewhere else. Otherwise, you risk losing possession. And not that that's a bad thing, but you haven't made the right decision. And I love what so many people that we align with and talk to, for example, such as Todd Bean, it's a 3-step process. Scan, choose, do, right? And oftentimes, we're mainly, in our culture, we're talking to players, or in certain clubs or in private training sessions, about do. But then the cognitive process is missing of, where is the space, right? How quickly is the defender closing me down? Oh, and at what angle? How am I positioned? Where did I take my first touch? How am I taking my touches? Am I taking the ball to the defender? Is the defender approaching me? Different way of viewing the game completely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And here's the thing, it's a quick word on unopposed training, because this is sometimes a controversial talking point. And it doesn't really need to be. But for purposes of this conversation, especially as it relates to players training on their own or with a trainer, this is important that we bring this up. 100%, the more touches you can get on the ball away from team training, let's be very clear, very specific what we're talking about. The more touches you can get on the ball, whether it's you and a wall, or you and a buddy, or you and a personal trainer, by all means, do it and enjoy it. Hopefully you enjoy it, because ultimately your relationship with the ball as a player, right, your love affair with the ball, as Roy Keane said, is what helps you develop that confidence to outplay pressure in a match, right? Now, that being said, we also have to be very clear, and you have to be very clear as players, about what it is you are training when you are doing a certain exercise. And this is a good segue, Mumbi, to sort of, if you're looking for personal training options, or you want better personal training, right? From whoever you get that from, you have to be able to ask your personal trainer important questions. For example, what exercise you set up this cone for me, this drill, okay? How does this relate to what I'm gonna do in the match, right? And what specifically am I working on when I do this? And do your research, because there's a difference between blocked practice, where you do one motion over and over and over, repetitive from the same spot, really the same situation, and random practice, which is more varied, right? Changing locations, changing different circumstances in which you encounter the ball. And research is very clear on this point, right? The research is very clear. First of all, people learn and acquire skills by doing that in context, right? So the context of playing football is it's you and there's an opponent and there's goals. So if you want to get better at playing football, play football. At the same time, can you improve by taking by isolating and improving some things that you maybe struggle with? Yes, you can, to a point, right? To a point. What you're really doing is refining and you're honing and you're trying to then establish certain ways that you move your body in conjunction with the ball. But it's not fair to say that you're actually improving when at the key, you know, in the essence of playing football, you're not necessarily improving that 100% in isolated training. You're refining, you're honing, and that's important. You're developing a love affair with the ball, all important. And there's a place for isolated training. Not saying there's not. It's just understand what it is you're training. Is that fair to say, Mumbi? Is that clear enough?
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is where parents can be involved as well, right? And players and parents maybe need to have a conversation about what's happening on game day or what's happening through the week in training of what you need to improve, what you need to get better. And then once you're clear on that, then I think, for example, finding a private trainer, if that's the step you want to take, can now be a bit more intentional, right? Because now you come to them and say, hey, I need to improve this, this, and this, okay? And now when you go to your training, hopefully the exercises that are set up can put you in a situation where you are having to, like you said, get your head up instead of your head always being down, because that's not the game. It's very hard to make quality decisions in a game if your head is down, right? Your head has to be up. And so for me, I know that, for example, when I do private training, I'm very intentional about either, and I know not everybody does this and not everybody maybe has the time to do this or maybe understands how this process works, but I do one of a couple things. First of all, I do talk to the player and I do talk to their parents and say, what is it you're looking to improve? Why did you reach out to me? Why did you send me a message, right? Because sometimes I send them a message, sometimes they send me a message. Oh, why do you want to train with me? What are you trying to improve? What have you reflected on? What have your parents reflected on? What has your coach told you? Sometimes I will look at a snippet of some game film to really figure out how do they move? What problems are they trying to solve? Do those problems align with what they're telling me, right? Then from there, I can design a session that is geared for that player's needs, right? So now, instead of them going into a situation where it's just completely non-contextual, it's very much contextual for them and what they're going to experience on a game day in their position and in certain situations that their team is going to be in. And that, for me, I found has so much more value. So, for example, there's a girl I worked with maybe a year ago, and the clip is going to be easy to find. But we wanted to work on her attacking play from the wing because she plays as an outside back. She also plays as a winger. And she wanted to work on getting up and down the line and serving balls from a wide area. Okay? So I designed an exercise where she played a bounce pass into a rebounder. She played it now into me as like a 9. The rebounder we positioned as maybe an 8 or a 10. And I positioned myself as a 9. And then when she played me, as a winger, she played me, she got around me at an overlap. Okay? The ball was played down the line in front of her, and then she played a cutback cross. And I had a couple pug goals set up inside the box at different angles to represent different runs. The beauty of that was she was working on exactly what she needed to work on in the game. Mm-hmm. Fast forward 2-3 weeks, there's a clip of her in the game intercepting a pass from the opposition as a right back, playing the ball into a midfield player, overlapping, getting the ball on the other side, cutting it back, goal. Very clear, very specific, very intentional. And it translated directly from the training. Instead of me having her, for example, dribble through cones with her head down.
No, I love it. Excuse me, my coughing, but no, I think it's beautiful, and it just goes to show you, like we were saying, to reiterate, there is a place for isolated training, and this is to piggyback off of your example. This is a girl who comes to you away from her team training and saying, "This is an aspect. Look how specific she was. This is an aspect of my game."
Yeah.
This is an aspect of my game that I want to improve. And so you isolated that specific thing, and then you put it in as much context as you can. Beautiful. Now, obviously, can you make it it depends on and something I would encourage people to do who are looking for private training opportunities is see if you can pair up, right? In terms of you and a player or a group of players, or maybe a group of 4, because the way to make that what you just presented even better is, let's say she has a runner in the box, right? And let's say there are 2 other kids. Let's say you're training 3. Let's say she has a runner in the box and she has a defender in the box who's going to cut out whatever pass, right? And then your instruction to the defender is just simply, hey, just make it really just pick a, there's one player, but pick one. Let's say, so I said 4 players. Let's say it's 4 players. You could have 3 players running into the box. Right? You could have one who's a defender and 2 attackers. And now the attackers make different runs. The defender has to pick which one. And now this player, the girl who you're focusing on to make the crosses, has to pick out one of the attackers. Right? So
whichever one is open, yeah.
Whichever one is open, because now there's a perception action coupling, which is the key. Right? So anyway, we can go on and on and on, but this is just a powerful little episode for players to really think about how to be better at creating, how to be better about finding solutions against pressure within games, right? Rather than the paradigm of, I need to learn how to do these moves. Yes, you need to learn how to be comfortable on the ball. And can that be honed outside of team training and in an isolated fashion? Yes, it can. Yes, it can. However, it is worked on and enhanced, and really the deep learning is when it's done against pressure, which requires perception action coupling, which requires a deep understanding of what the defender's doing, and then your an ownership and some responsibility from you to then shift and have a counter movement to whatever the defender does. Masterful players are exceptional at disguising their intentions, right? This is what they're exceptional at. It's not about having 5 moves. They're exceptional at disguising intentions and then finding the space-time edge to execute with precision. If you can do that, you become a better player. Anything to add, my man, before we close?
Nope. That was perfect. You said it all.
All right. So, like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us on the Impact Space podcast. Look forward to so many cool opportunities to learn and dissect and go over what makes this game so amazing. Thank you so much. Enjoy playing football. We'll see you next time.